Okay, so in this video, we're going to be talking about doing operations with complex numbers. And before we talk about how to do these operations, you first must know what a complex number is. And it's pretty straightforward. It just means you have a real number as well as an imaginary number. And the combination of the two, we call a complex number. So you can see the format here, a plus bi. That is the format that you write a complex number in. So for example, a is going to be the real part, and then bi is going to be the imaginary part. So to give you an example here, you could have 2 plus 2i. This is a complex number. Here is my real part, 2, and then my imaginary part is going to be 2i. And again, if you're on this video, you should know that the square root of a -1 ends up giving you an imaginary number. Hence, that's where these imaginary numbers are coming from. So again, the square root of -1 is equal to I. Again, that is where our imaginary numbers are coming from. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first example and talk about how we're going to go ahead and do these operations with complex numbers. So here's our first example, and it's pretty straightforward. I have addition and subtraction. And so what you want to think about here, look at your imaginary numbers. I have 8i and I have 4i. Those are like terms. I can combine my imaginary parts and then I can combine my real parts, and that is going to form a complex number. So for example, my real parts here, I have a -6 and a -5. When I combine that, I get -11. Okay, so I'm done there, done here. And then if I do 8i plus 4i, I get 12i, so plus 12i. So again, I'm in that format, a plus bi. I can't do anything else here. I cannot combine a real part and an imaginary part. It won't work. So this right here is my final answer. Okay? All right, let's try another example. So here's my next example, and this one can be kind of tricky because you have to remember with this negative here, this has to be applied to both of your terms inside parentheses. So for example, it's really a -1, and I want to distribute inside here. So essentially, it's going to be changing all of my signs. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the problem. I have -3 minus I, that's the first part, and then I'll have a -3 minus 6i, okay? Again, my signs will change inside parentheses on the second part there. And now I can go ahead and combine like terms. I have -3 and -3, that will give me -6. So gone and gone, and then I have a -i and a -6i, that will give me -7i. So again, I have a real part, I have an imaginary part, I can't combine them. This problem is now done, all right? Okay, let's try another one. So here's my next example, and this one's all multiplication. So remember, you can multiply in any order that you want. Doesn't matter. For this problem here, I'll just go ahead and go left to right. So for example, if I do -2i and multiply that by a +3i, I'm going to get -6i squared. Okay? Now remember from the beginning of the video, we know that the square root of -1 is going to be I. Well, think about how we can manipulate this equation. If I square both sides, that means I'm going to get -1 is equal to I squared. So in other words, I squared is equal to -1. So wherever I see an I squared, like I have here, I can go ahead and replace that with a -1. So I'm essentially going to be doing here -6 times a -1. And that's going to give me +6. So now I have the following. I have +6 times -7 plus 5i. Okay, all I have to do is distribute and then I'm done. So I'm going to take the 6, distribute inside, and then I'll be done. So 6 times a -7, that will give me -42. And then 6 times a +5i, that will give me +30i. So plus 30i. And that's it, I'm done. So again, I have a real part, I have an imaginary part, I can't combine them, so I leave it like that. Okay? All right, let's try 2 more examples. So here's my next example, and be careful here because a common mistake that I see a lot, most will want to take this exponent here and they want to apply it to both the 6 and the -3i. And so if they do that, they'll get 6 squared plus a -3i and then squared. Okay, that's actually going to be incorrect. You do not want to do it like that. Okay, if you do it like that, you are going to get it wrong because you have a binomial here, meaning you have 2 terms. And whenever you square 2 terms like we have here, you have to use FOIL. All right, so for example, getting rid of this here, if I were to FOIL it out, I'm simply going to multiply it 2 times. So 6 minus 3i times 6 minus 3i. And so doing FOIL, again, first, outside, inside, and then last. That is FOIL. So doing first, I do 6 times 6 and I get 36. Okay. Doing outside, I do 6 times a negative 3i, I get negative 18i. Okay. Doing inside, negative 3i times 6, I get negative 18i. So negative 18i. And then doing last, I'll get positive 9i squared. Again, I'm doing negative 3i times a negative 3i, hence it becomes positive. And again, I get 9i squared. So from here, what can you do? Well, you can combine like terms right here and here. If I do that, I get 36. And then I get minus 36i. And now remember, I have an I squared here. That I squared is really negative 1. So it's 9 times negative 1, I get negative 9. So negative 9. And now you have more like terms right here, 36 and the negative 9. So when I combine those, I'm going to get 27, right? Positive 27. So I get positive 27 minus 36 and then I. And again, here's my real part. Here's my imaginary part. I can't combine them. That is a complex number. I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and box it in. All right. Okay, let's try one more example. So here's my next example. And again, it is multiplication, so it's up to you how you want to multiply it. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to take the two binomials right here, and I'm going to do FOIL. And then I'll take care of the 4i. Okay. So again, you can multiply in any order. It's up to you, but I'm going to go ahead and take care of the binomials first. I find that to be easier, and then I'll worry about the 4i. All right, so if I do FOIL here, what do I get? I'll do 6 times 6, I get 36. Okay, doing outside, I get plus 48i. Doing inside, I get negative 30i. And then doing last, I get negative 40i squared. So negative 40i and then squared. From here, you want to go ahead and combine like terms. I have 48i, negative 30i. When I combine that, I get positive 18i. So 36 plus 18i. And then we know that I squared is really negative 1. So I'm essentially doing here negative 40 times a negative 1. That will give me positive 40. So plus 40. Okay. And then from here, I want to combine like terms. I have 36 and 40. I can combine that. When I do, I get 76. So now I have 76 plus 18i. And so from here, I have one more step. I have to take that 4i and multiply both of my terms. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in parentheses here. And I'm going to put 4i on the outside. And again, I have to multiply both of my terms here. So I'm going to do 4i times 76. When you do that, you get 304. And that will be I. And then I have to do 4i times 18i. That will give me 72i squared. So I'm going to put plus 72i squared. And we know that I squared is really negative 1. So this ends up being negative 72 here. So I'm going to go ahead and put negative 72 plus 304i. Again, I'm writing the real part first, followed by the imaginary part here. Okay? And at this point here, there's nothing else you can do. So I'm going to go ahead and box this in. And there you go. I have my complex number. I have my real part, my imaginary part. I cannot combine anything else here. I'm done. All right. And that is it. So that is operations with complex numbers. It's pretty straightforward. All you have to really remember is that I squared is negative 1. So whenever you see an I squared, you want to go ahead and replace that with a negative 1. If you do that, you should get the problem correct. Also, remember your imaginary parts are like terms, so you can combine them. And then your real parts will be like terms, you can combine them. But remember, you can never combine a real part and an imaginary part. All right? And that's it. So I hope that you found the video helpful. I hope that you gained something from it. If you did, in fact, gain something from the video, or if it helped you in any way, if you could just go ahead and give it a thumbs up, that'd be greatly appreciated. Also, make sure you subscribe. That way you get more math videos in the future, and I'll see you in the next one.